Hi, I'm Norman Perillo, a furniture designer maker at Perillo Design and a woodworking educator author at WoodSkills. And today I'd like to talk about a new portable tool case I'll be building over the next week or two. I'll show you an upcoming image of the actual tool case, and it's a tool case that originates from a Young Chan design. I had taken a furniture-related course with Young Chan about exactly 20 years ago at a furniture making school, a local furniture making school, and I was completely in awe of this portable tool case he brought along from San Francisco, and he traveled with it to teach and had the tools he used the most in his hand tool woodworking. Hand planes, saws, chisels mostly, and some measuring and layout tools. So I was in awe of it, and I told myself I'd like to perhaps build one day, and that time has come. I'm going to be going through all the steps in my build, and not too much detail, but an overview initially, and then all the subsequent steps on building it, and I'll show the first part of the possibly three-part series, and I'll be talking about how I laid out the tools and how it's critical to lay out the tools for your own, the tools you have in your own hand tool woodworking, your own chisels, saws, because they all come with different lengths. Some handsaw lengths and chisel lengths have been standardized, but some manufacturers don't follow any conventions, so they have longer ones or shorter ones. It depends on what you use. I'm going to be using this portable tool case when I travel and give woodworking demonstrations and teach woodworking techniques, hand tool oriented woodworking techniques. So I've assembled most of the tools that I'll be using. I'll have a couple of jigs to bring along too, but these are all the tools, the important tools that I use in my hand tool woodworking. So it's going to be an interesting build, and something I've wanted to build for almost 2 decades now. This is a book, one of Young Chan's, I think, his only books. So I actually have a signed copy here from that very same class in 2004 in Almont, Ontario, Canada, and it was something to Norman. I hope you like the idea of my book. Enjoy woodworking. Good luck with your tools. I appreciate coming to my class. So that's interesting. There's an image. Here's the image. It's an image of myself with Young Chan, standing next to Young Chan, along with that portable tool case. Now, what I did at the time is I took some rough dimensions of the exterior dimensions of the case, the depth, the two sides, the depth on both sides because they're actually different, the width and the length of it, but I had not taken some of the inner compartment dimensions of the dividers, but not everything. So I'm working by eye at the moment. I'm basing everything on a photograph or two and what I remember of the tool case. But the photograph is sufficient enough for me to work with, along with the dimensions I've just described. So it's going to be exciting for me. You'll see in the first part of this video that I already have everything laid out, and it's taken me almost a day or two to lay everything out to what I prefer in a layout. And it's also similarly based to what he had in his own portable tool case. I'll have some concerns about the weight, but I think he addressed it by making it structurally strong by using glues where you normally don't use glues. So I'm going to be implementing that criteria in the build. Along with that, it's mostly hand tools in there and layout tools. The second or third video we'll delve into the actual build itself after I've broken the wood down from a plank down to usable pieces, and I can work with the pieces, dimension them correctly, and create the exterior frame for the two sides of the portable tool case, and also start working on the dividers. So it's very critical that I get the dimensions right. I'm Norman Perillo from WoodSkills, and I'd like to talk about a few woodworking books I've written. My recent book is Quiet Woodworking in an Unquiet World. It talks about my movement to hand tools From high-tech to low-tech, a woodworker's journey, which chronicles my journey from my former high-tech career to my current furniture making career. Along with that, I offer courses through woodskills.com. The courses range from a basic woodworking course right through to furniture design and a comprehensive design and making course. All books are available in both print and digital format. So I'm finally at the point where I'm working on the dovetails, and I'm laying the dovetails out, optimizing the best layout for the different width of components. This is the top of the case, portable tool case. So I'll start with this, and I've decided on 2 tails, and this was the sample, a piece, shorter leftover piece, an offcut, so I can work with this and test it out. So these are the long sides of the top portion of the portable tool case, and this is where the tails will go. The pins are on the shorter lengths. So I subdivided into 2 tails, allowing for approximately 1/4 inch on each of the ends. And this is because I have a groove, and I have sort of another groove at the other side for to lock the bottom and the top portions of the case together. So I have to give it a little more wood at this end. I would say they're functional dovetails, not as decorative as I usually make them with narrow pins, but I'll work with this for now. And I'm also using a 1:7 ratio for a hardwood. I'm going to be laying out the tails on the other side of this offcut, the test piece. So this is the way I do it. I mark off 1/4 inch from each end, and then square that end off. Sorry, this becomes a new reference point where I can further subdivide the tails. And I've already set up my divider. I'm using a divider method, and I've also already optimized it for 2 tails. So the premise is to lock it into one of the divisions and mark off. So that's the point for one of the tails, and do this at the other end. So I have 2 points, and this actually delineates the 2 tails. Now if I use this as a 1:7 ratio, you see why I've got the blue tape there? It's easy to make a mistake. So I mark this off, and same here. So this delineates the 2 tails. So this is similar. So I have the 2 tails delineated. Now I need to bring the tails down to the baseline, which I haven't even defined yet. So this is the marking gauge is set to the thickness of the board. Both boards, the horizontal and vertical boards of the case, are identical in thickness. So I've set this correctly, and I mark. What I like to do is enhance the outline. We're using a pencil for the baseline. So now that I've done that, I use again the dovetail jig, the dovetail marking gauge to bring the rest of the tails down. So that's marked off. Now I also apply the lines on both sides. The reason I do this is because I check in case the socket wanders off, so I can confirm that it's straight, perpendicular. So these are the tails, they're marked off now. And I also like to fill in the waist portion, so there's no possibility of making an error when I'm sawing. So I've got 2 sets of dovetails. I'm going to use this as a practice piece for now to determine if I'm okay with this spacing, and I'll continue with that. So I've already prepared one side of the test piece, and I'm okay with the 2 dovetails and the spacing, because after all it's functional. I need structural strength on this portable tool case because of the weight, so I decided not to use my my traditional narrower pins, and do it this way. So I've, again, with the marked tails, I'll go through the process of how I do dovetails. So I've already established the baseline. I've identified and marked all the sides and the corners so they match when I reassemble them, and I transfer the tails to the pins, because it's important, since all the tails are really custom. There's a slight difference in each set of tails, so they need to match the pins on the horizontal board. So they're all identified and marked with the outside faces. I do that, so I've already done that, and so here we are. This is marked, so I've knocked the corners off. Now there are different ways of removing waste from the center portion. What I prefer is actually just chopping it out. Some people use a coping saw or a small saw, a narrow saw. I'm okay with, I've tried that, and I much prefer just chopping it up. So this is the beginning of the dovetails. I just need to remove this middle portion. I'm going to be using my dovetail jig next to perform that. So this is a dovetail jig I've been using for 2 decades now, and I have 2 of these. I like them so much they're actually spring-loaded now. It's more interesting. I use this to establish or to remove waste, establish both the tails and the pins, and transfer the tails to the pins, and actually remove waste from the boards afterwards. So what it does, it provides me clearance from the workbench, and I'm able to lock everything in like so, and I'll just measure that for square. So I lock it in. I have numerous videos on this on my YouTube channel, but it has both the horizontal and the vertical portion, so I can transfer the tail board to the pin board afterwards, after I've done this. So I can go ahead and do this. So what I do is I work my way down a little past halfway, or sometimes 2/3 of the way, and then flip the board over. Continue for each of these sockets. I should have a backer board below the piece. I'll probably set that up next. These are little chunks that come out. So I'm almost, actually I'm over 2/3 of the way down. Let's just do a little more. Flip the board over. If you have a backer board, you can actually get away with completing the whole waste removal from one side, because you're protecting the surface here with a backer board, and I'll probably introduce that next. So the process might appear tedious, but once you get going, it's actually not too bad. So I'm almost done here. Still working on that piece now. Since I've removed all the waste on this tail board, I need to just clean the corners out, and that's easy to do with a chisel. This is how I do it. So I've completed this test piece, and this is the layout, and so it seems to be working out. Now I need to do it on the real pieces, and these are the real pieces here. So I noticed I've marked them out on both ends. They'll match with the horizontal parts of the case. So they're at the other end. So that's the pin board, and I do that later. So what I'll do is I'll continue with this process and create tails on two ends of each board. Longer boards. I'm only going to be doing the top of the case because it's set up for the top of the case now, the spacing and everything. I'll rework the spacing for the wider bottom of the case, the tool case. I'm going to be transferring tails to the pin board. I've already done 3 corners of the top of the case, and the left over, the last one is the B corner. I saved that just to give a demonstration of how I do it. So this is the tails have already been created earlier. This is the tails for the B corner. These are the completed pins and tails, and I'll just demonstrate how I create the tails using this dovetail jig also. So this is a square corner. I've already confirmed that it's square and, in both directions. First I'll create the baseline. When you create the baseline on the pin board, you don't need to do the outside edges because that wood remains. Highlight the baseline pin, the mark line. Pencil, fine pencil, that always helps. Use a very fine pencil for that. This is the outside of the board. I make sure to mark the outside of the board. I have the baseline established, so I need to transfer the tails now. So what I do first is, using this dovetail jig, is it's a spring loaded, by the way, so it makes it considerably easier to set up. Using a square, this is a backer board I had in temporarily. Using a square, so I squared the board off with the outside edge out. So I get my tail board, set it up in here. Also using that square to determine if the boards are square to each other. So they're square to each other now. I can tighten everything down. I use a marking knife to transfer. I've used different marking knives over the years, but sometimes I just use an X-Acto knife, but this is a little more solid. And it has that flat face. I can't really use it when I'm doing narrower dovetails, but it seems to work in this application. So, remove this. Twice. So I have my 4 lines, and I'll just highlight them or enhance them with a pencil mark. The next step is to bring those marked lines down to the baseline. I always do both sides. Oftentimes I don't need both sides marked, but it's just a habit of formed, and it has me confirm if the pins are perpendicular to the edge or to the end. Just a good habit to get into. So once I've done that, I make sure to mark the waist. It's very easy to make a mistake here if you're not focused. And now move slightly to the left here and saw the pins. I actually split the line in 2 for my pins when I'm sawing my pins. So it's half on the waist side and half on the outside. Difficult to start to cut. So that's done. So I'll move back over to the, actually I'll just continue here. I'll remove this tail board, insert this with the backer board. So I have the baseline lined up with the cleat. It's perfect. Okay, so I can go ahead and chop. Keep going down. Good idea, good advice not to get too aggressive with the actual pins. Notice I angle the chisel to conform to the recess for the pin on the pin board. Piece of wood, and that's everything just popped off there. So we're done. So the next step is to actually just clean the walls and remove any So I'm actually just fine-tuning the sockets, the pin sockets. Making sure the bottoms of make sure the corners are not, there are no obstructions in the corners and the edges. So if I test this now again. There, it's fine. So I can get to a point where I can assemble the box, and I need to create some rabbets and along the edges for the rest of the build. But this is sufficient for now, so I can actually assemble the box, the top portion, or the tool case, I should say. So that's fine. Just separate them. So I've completed this section, all the tails and the pins, and everything's in. I can't stress that enough to make sure to mark everything. It's confusing if you don't mark. You can easily make a mistake. So A, B, C, D would correspond to each corner. This is all done. So this was actually the easier of the two. The bottom portion of the portable tool case is wider. The boards are wider, so this involves more dovetails, more tails per section, and so considerably more involved in working that because of the just more fine-tuning and adjusting to do. So I'll get on with that now. So please subscribe to my YouTube woodworking channel, where I share more of my woodworking techniques, my woodworking philosophy, my thoughts on woodworking, and all the challenges I've experienced, and I introduce some of the new forms of woodworking I've discovered. And also visit woodskills.com, where I have a good selection of my books, both in print and digital format, on woodworking, and all my online courses, and I also offer woodworking plans. I have maintained a regular blog on what I've got going on in my workshop and in woodworking in general. So enjoy.